Hi, I'm Autumn,
And I'm Laura,
and together we're
the
the Boo
Boo
Sisters.
Sisters.
Today, Laura, I have a little treat for you in that I'm doing a spooky story on a place that you and I have been, actually.
Ooh,
I know, and that doesn't narrow it down a lot because we've been to so many places that are haunted together. Um, but I wanted to talk a little bit before we jump into stories about how, since we were little, we kind of have always felt like we could feel when things were a little off. Um,
very true. So we're going to freak people out in episode 3.
well, I don't know. Do people argue that? Do people think that intuition or senses like that don't exist? Or is it pretty
I
much common that
I
people think that's a
think
possibility?
there are a lot of skeptics about that. The people that I've told that I've had feelings like that have only been a couple, and I have not gotten that skepticism level. Most of the time the people have believed, but I've only told like 3 or 4 people. So now I guess I'm telling everybody. There's
In the
that.
whole world. So we'll see. You can feel free to believe what you want to believe, but I do feel like Laura and I have always thought since we were little that we could tell when something was a little off in a room we stepped in or in the universe. In fact, there's been times when Laura has called or texted to check in on me because she felt something off, and in fact, there was something wrong. It's just an interesting concept. There's this one time, I don't know if you remember this, Laura, but we were on a road trip with mom and we went into a antique store. We were all separated throughout the floors, and I went into this back room. On the back wall of this room was this wedding dress, this old wedding dress with long sleeves, covered in lace. It was a beautiful, high-colored old wedding dress. And immediately when I saw it, I had this wave of sadness just flow over me. And I ran out of the room and out of the antique store. And I couldn't, it was like I couldn't breathe if I stayed in there any longer. And it's the one time that that feeling that I can't place, that sixth sense, was most prominent in my life. It's the one time. I don't know. Do you
Oh,
remember that?
interesting.
Do you remember that trip
Um,
or?
we've been in so many antique stores too and come across things where we've had feelings on them. I kind of vaguely remember a wedding dress scenario. I don't know that we talked about it at length, other than maybe something happened and it carries that energy, and we just accepted it and went on with
Right.
our
We
day.
just accepted it. And I think that's kind of what we've always done. Do you have a story that you can remember that you felt, oh, I have this weird superpower?
I've had feelings walking into buildings, and not just ones where we entered the building with the intention of ghost hunting or with the intention of, oh, yeah, this place is haunted already, and that's why I'm here, but just buildings in general, where I definitely have gotten feelings and something has led me to one direction or another to investigate and find a carving on the wall somewhere. How would I even know to look there and find this name carved into the wall,
Mm,
or that sort of thing? So yeah, I do believe in feelings and getting swept up in the energy of somewhere and not really knowing why, or in the energy of an item in the case of your memory.
right. It's so unusual. I feel like a lot of people have intuitions or sixth senses like that, and we don't often really think about it. It's important to always listen to those senses. So I think that you get to start this week.
Yes, and I get to wait on bated breath for what haunting you have decided to do this week that I already know about that I've been to.
I know it's going to be exciting.
You have definitely not been to mine. Well, neither have I. It is one that I did not know about before starting.
Okay.
I think this one will be maybe something that will touch you more, and I don't exactly know why, but
Oh,
when I was
great.
reading, when I was when I was doing the research, I was thinking to myself, "Oh, I bet you this is going to make Autumn sad." And I didn't choose it for that reason.
Is it about animals dying?
No.
Okay,
No.
then it's fine.
I feel like that about movies all the time. Oh
Y-
my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. I did my haunting on the Burlington City Cotton Mill in Burlington, Vermont.
Okay.
You're like, it doesn't make me
Let's.
sad so far.
I think it's okay.
It's June 28th in the year 1900. The clock is about to strike 6:30 in the evening. Dozens of mill workers are returning to their tasks at the Burlington City Cotton Mill after a dinner break. 22-year-old French Canadian Marie Blais is running through the pouring rain with her sister and their mutual friend, all three of them among the returning laborers. None of them expected the fierce storm slowing down their return. Together, Marie's friend and sister dash safely across the nearby train tracks at the Lakeside Avenue crossing, but Marie is not so lucky. Maybe the storm is what slows her down. Maybe her skirt catches on the tracks. Maybe she trips. But somehow, some way, the engine of the oncoming train strikes her, sending Marie 75 feet through the air. She lands in a heap of broken bones, bleeding from her head, eyes blank and staring toward the smokestacks, calling her to a shift she would never finish.
Oh, I don't like it. That's horrible. Why are you crossing the train tracks if it's even like remotely visible?
There's a lot of, I think, mystery surrounding this. I couldn't find anything as far as like witness testimony, even her sister or the friend or anybody like that, as to what was happening. But everybody knew and reported on this as being a really stormy night. So it could have simply been the train light maybe didn't seem like actual train light. Maybe it seemed like lightning because it was flickering in the darkness or something. And
Mm,
the sound of the train that would normally be rumbling on the tracks was covered up by the wind and the thunder. The other thing to note is that these train tracks, despite being so close to the mill, and despite having so many people needing to cross them all the time to get to that mill, did not have any sort of safety precautions up until this point. The flashing lights or the gates that would come down and block people or any sort of signage or anything like that.
thankfully, times have changed.
What makes this incredibly interesting to me is that in the years following her death, Marie would not be forgotten. Dozens of reports flooded in from workers and others in the area who claimed to witness strange occurrences. Marie's ghostly figure was seen in the mill tending to the looms, or they would hear the machinery running late at night when no one was working. Others claimed to hear a deathly shriek or see the train headlight falter or fail completely as it passed the mill. The regular train engineer also witnessed a figure on the tracks in the same place each time he took the route and said he was pursued by her spirit so relentlessly that he was forced to quit his job.
Wow.
So, all of these things in a nutshell, I mean, that's the craziest thing about this haunting is just how many people had experiences and just how many newspapers and things reported on what was going on, not just her death, but her ghosts and the accounts of the paranormal, which yeah, in the 1900s was gaining some popularity to kind of do the seances and that sort of thing. But at the same time, it still wasn't, I don't think, generally accepted. Oh, yeah, today I saw a ghost. I have an article here for you that I'm going to read from November 28th in 1890 from the Vermont Watchman. So only a few months after her death. Dozens of Burlingtonians are ready to swear that they have seen a veritable ghost working at her old loom at the cotton mills. Visitors do not seem to disturb her, and whoever cares to take the trouble can see her at work at midnight. They recognized her as a young woman weaver who was run over and killed by a train while walking on the track alongside the shops, and that train now gives a jolt and the headlight goes out when passing the spot at night. The Burlington Daily News says, unlike some tales of ghosts, the story of the one at the Queen City cotton mill does not wane and grow cold. It rather increases and is more and more intense and exciting from day to day. It is strange that the watchman is not utterly amazed by the actions of the ghostly visitor, but he is not. He is getting used to the familiar form of the feminine spook and would probably feel lonesome if she did not appear. The big engineer on the night express shakes every time the train passes over the spot where the life was crushed out of the girl whose spirit they say is the ghost of the vicinity. He says that it is the motion of the train that caused his knees to knock together upon reaching the fatal spot. He denies the story that the headlight keeps going out. But the believers ask, how comes the story so vivid, so distinct, and so explicit? Must there not be some foundation to this headlight business? Isn't it a strange coincidence that someone should suddenly extinguish the light just where the accident occurred? It is all imagination that causes one to hear noises resembling dying groans. Can it simply be the weird puffing and blowing of the engine? The watchman keeps his own counsel. He may know more than he will divulge about this now somewhat familiar spook, which is attracting the attention of students of the supernatural and preternatural from far and near. It is the most widely talked of ghost which has ever inhabited the spook haunts of Burlington, and Burlington has been the home of many spirits and is today. The recounting of half the tales of the doings of these uncanny beings would fill many pages. There are new converts to the authenticity of the report of the cotton mill ghost every day. For various reasons, however, the desire that their names not be published. Visit the mills at night if you have the courage and see for yourself and be convinced. Others have, and you will find them there watching, strangely fascinated, almost overpowered by what they see wrought before them. The soft light within, the moving figure in white, the look of agony upon the face, the quick yet subtle movements, the machinery seemingly in rapid motion. All this is enough to blanch the readiest cheek and make the stoutest heart quake, they say. Did you ever see a ghost? If so, you can appreciate what happens nightly at the Queen City cotton mill. If you are weak and have little courage, keep away.
Okay, so listen. It is stories like this that I feel spirits could get trapped in a pattern of life because of some a death that happens so quickly and so tragically that that essence or presence truly doesn't know they're dead and all they're going through is the motions that they've gone through in life or day to day or finding the
Mhm.
people they were with or going to work or crossing the same path because that's what they did every day.
So you think this sudden occurrence, the sudden event of her life being taken, is causing a residual haunting, essentially.
I don't even know if it's residual. I think it definitely could be residual. So a residual haunting is like a recording and I it could be like a recording of the event, but I'm thinking moreover it's not a recording and it's this essence or this spirit that's trapped in a constant battle of trying to figure out that they're not alive, but they're living as if they were.
Hmm.
She's going on the same path, she's going to work, she's in the same place. She might be trying to find her
So I
sister and her
guess
friend.
you have to ask yourself what that type of haunting would be, because while it's somebody who maybe in their spirit form has a conscientiousness, it's not the same thing when people say intelligent haunting, which usually means an interactive haunting, like somebody responding to you and answering questions and being in the present time.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So what would it be? It would
And
have
they're
to be
not,
like a third type.
yeah, maybe we just created a third type.
Ooh, that would
And the
be
third
cool.
type is where you're stuck in a pattern because you haven't figured out that you've passed. I would
The
call it, what's that horrible movie that kids who were born in the 80s are scarred from, where the kid and his horse gets stuck in the sand, in the sinking sand, and he can't
and
pull his horse out?
you're talking about the never ending story?
Yes, I think it's a never-ending sand trap haunting. Just they're trying to get out of this situation. I
The
don't
horse
know
was
why
named
we watched it.
Artax and the
Something weird
boy
like that.
was Artreyu.
Yeah, also something weird like that.
And yeah, he definitely couldn't get his horse out of the mud. So it's an interesting visual that you paint with that, that the
No, but I'm
ghost is
just saying.
essentially the
But I'm
horse stuck in
saying,
the mud.
yes. And if that horse had a ghost, then that horse would be like reliving that moment because it's stuck in a situation that's so tragic. It's going to continually, for the eternity of time, try to get out of that situation.
It could be. I
That's
still
my
want a better name for it. So if any listeners out there think of a better name for what that would be, that's not a residual haunting and not an intelligent haunting, but something sort of in between that's like a time loop. If you think of something, let us know.
You can send us a message on our website, which is boosisters.com, and let us know what we should title this kind of haunting we just made up together.
Yes. I'm going to give you another way to look at the haunting.
Okay.
As I was researching this, I was thinking about why her spirit could have still been around. And it occurred to me that if something like this happened to me or someone even that I loved, I would be fighting tooth and nail to warn others away from the same thing happening to them. And so I would be trying to keep people away by being scary or just trying to warn them in general.
Like a constant reminder. I don't think she might even try to be scary. It's more like she's trying to remind people of what happened there.
So many were entranced by her story and saddened by what happened to her that in 1908, there were a bunch of people who came together and fought for a safer crossing. And that was only 8 years after what happened to her. What they changed was that they installed an underpass underneath the train tracks so that no worker, no pedestrian was forced to cross the train tracks again after that.
Is the cotton mill still in operation?
The smokestack still stands, but the mill building itself has been renovated into a series of private offices. The underpass and the train tracks still remain.
So have the hauntings stopped since they did that?
From what I found, no.
Then that theory is debunked.
But is it debunked, or is it because it is now turned into an urban legend that people are attributing other things to her ghost? It would be really interesting to be in contact with the people in those private offices, maybe people who don't even know about the ghost, and see if they've had experiences.
That's a good idea.
Because if they heard random machinery, these large looms and things that would have been running at the time, that would be something that would be hard to debunk.
Right.
So, as the newspaper reported, would you have more than a little courage or would you keep away?
I think it would be interesting to go and try to communicate with her because going back to the sand pit theory that we don't have a good name for, if it is someone trapped in this eternal loop of trying to get out of it, if there was some way to communicate with her to help her realize that she is stuck and she has passed on, and for her to realize that so she can have some peace.
Or even just tell her, hey, as tragic of an event as it was, look at what a difference it made in the lives of others and potentially helping other people and saving other people that same sort of tragedy.
Right, that she did that.
Yeah. What would be your boo scale rating?
Two ghosts because I don't feel that it's very scary. I don't think she's a scary ghost. I don't think she's trying to scare people.
That's fair. I think I might give it like even a one because I find what happened to her scary and the
Mhm.
idea that you might see her death moment, that's a little scary.
Yeah,
But the
that would be horrifying.
or hear it, like hearing that kind of blood-curdling scream.
Can I just tell you that this story is extra scary right now because it's currently raining outside?
That's
Like,
atmospherically
yeah,
cool.
it really adds to it.
I'm really excited to hear what haunting we've been to that you decided to
Okay,
do for today.
so I am going to tell you the history, which you've already learned once, but I've probably forgotten because I did, of the Moon River Brewing Company in Savannah, Georgia.
I do know this one.
Savannah is arguably one of the most haunted cities in America because of its deep-rooted history, and it's also one of my very personal favorite places to visit. In fact, it's where I had my bachelorette party. And on my bachelorette party, me
Which I
and
planned.
which Laura planned perfectly, by the way, because in my bachelorette party, she planned a ghost tour, which only I would love. But
Because what says love and happiness? It's
more than
like
a ghost,
ghosts.
eternal love and happiness. We took a ghost tour during that vacation, and Moon River Brewing Company was one of the stops.
I know which place you're talking about. I remember walking in. I remember
Yeah.
being packed that night in the lower floor when we did
Yeah,
the
and I'm
tour
going
and
to
then
talk
going up
about
the
that. Yeah.
stairs.
Moon River has been featured on Ghost Adventures, Paranormal Quest, as well as a special Halloween episode of our favorite Ghost Hunters,
Yeah,
which,
yeah, yeah.
of course, has increased its popularity among the paranormal community. Moon River is a beautiful old building in downtown Savannah. It was said to be the most beautiful building in Savannah when it was erected in 1821. Owner Eliezer Early and his wife commissioned it to be built to become the City Hotel. It was designed to be a haven for the rich and famous who wanted to see the beautiful southern quiet city of Savannah. Not only was it the first hotel in Savannah, but it also served as a branch of the Bank of the United States as well as the city's post office.
I have a hard time believing Savannah was ever quiet city life, but
Really, I still
okay.
feel like when we go there, it seems so much slower and quieter, and that's why, in part, I love it. Like it just seems so nice, and
Peaceful and like simple is different to me than quiet. To me, it's very loud and very energetic.
that's so interesting. Maybe it's because you are from the Midwest, small town nowhere, and I'm from basically DC.
I like how you just dissed where I live. You're
Yeah,
from that
small
place with
town
all those
nowhere.
cows,
Well,
nobody
think about it.
around.
So if you go to Savannah, you're like, oh, it's so busy and crazy. And I go to Savannah and I'm like, oh, it's so quiet.
I suppose, yeah, it's all a matter of perspective. It's true.
So when it was the City Hotel, a few people of note stayed here. War of 1812 war hero Winfield Scott, the Marquis de Lafayette, and naturalist James Audubon. Audubon actually stayed there for 3 months while attempting to sell his books of wildlife sketches in Savannah,
That's really
which
interesting.
I think is so cool because I love Audubon and it would have been awesome to see him on the sidewalk selling his wildlife sketches. Peter Wiltberger bought the City Hotel in the 1860s, early 1860s, and he renovated it and put a real live lion and lioness on display to draw business.
I don't remember that part either.
I
I
don't
don't
think we
remember
learned
real
that part.
lions.
And I deep internet searched to try to find a picture of this hotel with lions. Of course, it doesn't exist. I can't find any pictures of the hotel with lions. And I was trying to find how did these lions, how were they on display? in this little hotel. Were they outside in a cage? I was trying to figure it out.
Unfortunately, it probably was not very humane. I'm
How
guessing
they
that they probably had them in really tiny cages.
just sitting there. So
Yeah.
sad. So the hotel was thriving, but the Civil War was getting heated. The last guest checked out in 1864, just a few short months before General Sherman captured Savannah. The hotel was permanently closed. General Sherman did not lay waste to the city as he did so many other places. It's rumored that he said and felt that Savannah was too beautiful to destroy. So thank goodness we still have relics like the Moon River Brewing Company and other buildings in Savannah.
That whole city has so many great historic, beautiful places. It's kind of crazy.
Right. We could probably do a whole 5-year podcast on just Savannah.
I had actually thought about doing one of the places that we went to as well. Not for this specific one, but it had crossed my mind because one of them stuck out to me. But
Ooh, okay. Well,
maybe
you
we'll
should do it.
revisit that down the road.
Yeah, you should do it. Most notably, the building was used several times as a makeshift hospital during the yellow fever outbreaks in 1854 and 1876. Yellow fever killed approximately 1,100 people in Savannah alone during those two outbreaks. Since then, the building was passed from business to business and was used for quite a few different purposes. At the turn of the century, it was used as a lumber and coal warehouse. And as coal slowly died off, the use of coal, the building was used for general storage. And in 1860, the building became an office supply store with a large printing press. Then the building sat empty for 20 years until 1995 when it was renovated into a brew pub and Moon River Brewing Company debuted in 1999.
I think the yellow fever thing is the thing that I remember the most. And I think it's probably because when you go on a haunted tour, they focus on the negative times, like the bad times
Mm-hmm.
where people would have died and not the like, oh yeah, this was a post office and also had lions at one point because
Well, that
nobody
right,
on a
and
ghost
also had
tour like
lions,
necessarily needs to know that.
unless
But
there's
I'm
like a
always
lion
curious.
ghost that comes out.
I mean, who's to say there isn't?
I know exactly.
I've watched some episodes of different ghost teams who have gone and investigated zoos and stuff or a pet hospital.
That'd
Who
be, I would
knows?
not watch that. That sounds too sad.
No, I like to think about it in a positive way. Our animal companions stick around and
Help us out.
yeah, and they're
Yeah.
still with us because they love us, just like a person might stick around to watch over you when they pass away.
That's a nice spin. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the hauntings now, and I'm going to start from the bottom of the building and move up. It's 4 floors. I'm going to start at the basement. The most famous and active spirit is said to haunt the basement of Moon River. He has been witnessed on so many occasions by guests and staff that they've named him Toby. Toby has been known to brush up against people playing in the billiards room and has evenly violently pushed people on several occasions. Others have reported sudden coldness, but they are in a basement, so who knows? Bottles falling or being thrown, and being touched. It is rumored that slaves might have been kept in the basement at some point, which could be a reason for the basement hauntings, but I didn't find any real evidence to support that claim.
I have to stop you.
Okay.
As you are reading those hauntings, I couldn't help but think to myself, that could be a lion ghost. That could be a lion ghost. Rubbing up against people, that could be a lion
Thro-
ghost. Knocking
Throwing
over
bottles.
bottles, that could be a lion
Maybe it
ghost.
is. Maybe the lions were kept in the basement and it was
I
like, come to the
know,
hotel.
right?
And
Toby could be a lion. You heard it here first.
so the main floor is the floor that you walk into off the street. So that main busy bustle brewery area that we walked into, the main floor has had the most recorded history. In 1832, James Stark was known as the town drunk and a troublemaker. He was not well liked. He walked into the then hotel and he was aiming callous remarks at Dr. Philip Minus. And Minus ended up shooting and killing Stark in the hotel. Minus claims that he saw Stark going to draw his pistol, and so he shot first. Since Stark wasn't well liked in the town and the town needed their one and only Dr. Minus, he was quickly acquitted of the murder. One of the biggest acts of violence on the property happened in 1860, right before the onset of the Civil War. Tensions were already high, they were rising, and there was already a lot of us against them mentality. In Savannah, particularly as a small town in the South, they did not appreciate tourists from the North. James Sinclair, a Northerner, decided to stay at the city hotel. However, the residents were furious that he was allowed to stay in their town, and the people of Savannah pressured him to leave, but he refused. The hatred intensified into a mob, and they marched down the street to the city hotel. They went in and they dragged Sinclair outside of the building onto the sidewalk and street right outside. They stripped him naked and they beat him nearly to death. Sinclair miraculously lives through this incident, but the event was so violent that I thought it was important to put into the history just because of the powerful negative energy that could still be on the property just from the event itself.
Mm.
So today, the main floor is said to be haunted by James Stark, and he apparently is still the same angry drunk guy. Staff and guests report bottles being thrown, and several women have indicated that their thighs are groped. They think that it's their dates, but then they freak out when their date is eating or talking with their hands, and they still get groped, and their two hands of their date are like on the table,
That would
and
be
then they
weird.
freak out. Several other women have reported being locked in the bathroom stalls, and when they go to unlock their stall to get out, no amount of force is able to open the stall door. I read one particular story where the lady started crying hysterically after being locked in for 15 minutes, that she screamed for help until the door just opened by itself. And that's happened to several people. So I think that's a little weird.
That's why you take a bathroom buddy.
So also I was thinking I came up with another theory while I was doing this research. What if the emotions or the personality we have, what we're living at the time of our exact death carries on? So if we die in an angry scenario, then that spirit is angry. And if someone dies sad, then the spirit's sad,
So it's a
fulfilled.
version of you, an impression of you, but only one type.
Yeah, like it doesn't change. Like it's impression of me, but I'm always whatever I was when I died.
So that would be an impression haunting.
Yeah, let's call it that.
Yeah, I think that that's a legitimate idea. I can see why they would attribute that to the angry drunk guy, although the skeptic in me wants to say maybe guys freak out their girlfriends by making it seem like that and then making their hands busy on purpose to freak them out.
The history of Moon River Brewing Company is pretty well known, especially by
Yeah.
locals. So that could be the case.
The bathroom thing, the stalls could be really just bad fixtures in the bathroom. I mean, I've been stuck in a stall before and I don't immediately think ghost. But if I went somewhere where haunting was said to happen or that these deaths happen, I might think that. I might attribute it to that more so because my mind's already in that place, and I don't get locked in a bathroom stall all the time. So it wants a reason.
What? You don't get locked in the bathroom stall all the time?
I mean, like a good
Yeah.
once a week. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. There could be, I'm not saying that there could be other reasons. The main floor is said to be the least haunted, but I think that's simply because there's so many people stuffed in there that you can't, you don't know if a noise or if an occurrence or someone brushing up against you is a ghost or someone else just in that crammed bar.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be the most haunted place, but I don't think you'd ever know because it's so busy. The top two floors, so the third and fourth, they're known to be the most violent and disturbing. On the third floor, a full body apparition known as the Lady in White has been seen by several people. She is referred to by staff and guests as Mrs. Johnson. In the 1990s, renovation was being done on the third floor, and the wife of the foreman was pushed down the stairs and fell all the way to the bottom of the staircase in such a way that it was clear she had not fallen, she had been pushed. The foreman refused to come back and do any further renovations on the building. Others, too, in this space have felt being tugged or pushed on the stairs as well. The fourth floor has the darkest energy of all. Circling back to when the building was used as a hospital, most of the patients were kept on the third and fourth floors. It is estimated that several hundred people died on the floors, most of them from yellow fever, and most of them being children. Children's laughter and playing can be heard frequently on both floors, and many think if anyone is haunting the building at all, it's probably the hundreds of children who spent their final hours here. Going back to
That's
that,
really sad.
yeah, I want to go back to that theory if spirits are caught in their last emotion or attitude of death. It gives reason to why this space would seem the most desolate or hopeless because of all these kids who knew that they were basically going to die, and all the parents who knew they were going to die and couldn't be with them, essentially. It would just be
Was it
such an
just
empty.
children or just
No,
predominantly children
it
were the
was
ones that got sick?
predominantly children that got sick.
Okay.
Enough people have visited Moon River and have had firsthand experiences of supernatural events that it's developed a reputation as one of the best places to go if you yourself want to experience a haunting firsthand. So I went through all the floors and I went through all the hauntings and all the history, but I'm going to end this story with a true bummer. Are
Oh
you
no.
are you ready?
Is this an animal thing?
No.
Okay, then
Yeah, I'm
we're
gonna
fine.
hark back to the lions. No, I'm not. The bummer is Moon River Brewing Company closed permanently 3 months ago
Oh man.
after 25 years in business. So you
Why?
can't even go there anymore.
Why did it close?
When asked, the owner refused to disclose the reason for closing, but said that a statement would be released shortly. However, by the time of this recording, no statement has ever been released. Many people commented on Reddit that the business and the food and the location itself was deteriorating at a rapid rate, and many assumed that the cause is financial,
Hmm.
but I like to think that the ghost closed it down.
Why would they close it down?
I don't know because they don't like people in their space. So the ghosts are like, we
They're
better
like, leave
close
us
it.
in peace.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like if the drunk guy was really behind those things, it sounded like he was having a good time, getting a kick out of freaking people out.
So I'm super interested in what it might become next. I don't know if the owner still has it and just shut it down or they're planning to reopen it as something else, but it will be interesting to follow that property to see what happens to it and to see if the top two floors, which have not ever been renovated since it was a hospital, actually get renovated into something, or maybe it will go back into being a hotel and they'll separate those huge spaces again.
Which is the floor that we went up to? I thought it was the third.
Yes, I think it was the third, if I'm remembering correctly, which was also used as a hospital floor.
Hmm.
I want to hear how you remember that space because I remember it feeling very dark.
There was a room to the right, the little alcove door, like the door had been taken off its hinges or something. I remember it being open to the next room. And the person who was giving us the tour was like, yeah, we don't do the tour in there. It's not safe. And I remember as the tour was heading back downstairs, I snuck in there because I wanted
Mm,
to see what it was.
smart.
And it was just being used for all this story. I don't recommend doing that. Please don't, like, if kids are listening to this, don't take my example and do things that you're told not to do. If
Yeah,
somebody
it's
says to
not
you, this
safe.
is not safe, it's probably for a
Don't do it.
reason. I was being foolish, but as I snuck into that space seemed darker. It was holding their storage and just planks of wood leaning up against the wall, like maybe they were trying to renovate the space. And I just remember feeling in that space like there was something there.
Yeah, I remember. So I didn't go into that space, but I remember walking into the third floor and I remember thinking, this isn't too big a deal. As they were telling stories, they let us wander around that big room, right? And I went
Mm-hmm.
to the front side where the windows are near the street. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people didn't roam that far as I did. And I remember being over there kind of isolated from the group and just feeling uneasy. Not even sad. I thought I knew the story. They had told us the story of the hospital, and I thought that the space would feel sad, but I didn't feel sad. I felt very uncomfortable.
Was it the corner to the right of the windows?
Yes.
That's the corner that I was taking a bunch of pictures in. I kept taking pictures of that corner, thinking, I'm going to catch something over there.
Yeah, I just felt like I was not supposed to be right there for some reason.
That's really interesting.
So we've been to this space, so I can't ask you if you would go or not because we've been there. But given your personal experience and the history and the stories you've just heard, what's your boo rating of it?
It's hard to give it a boo scale rating like we do other things because you hear the stories and that's one thing, and being there is another. And so I almost feel like I have to give it two ratings. The rating I would give it just by hearing the stories that you told today, I would probably give it a two. I don't think it's all too scary. It had a couple weird
Violent stories,
occurrences
yeah.
and violent stories. And I do feel like the encounters there could be more on the negative side, which makes it a little
Mhm.
bit more of that scary boo factor. But having been there, I almost want to give it an extra ghost. So three ghosts out of five, because I did have that eerie feeling in certain areas. I didn't really have an experience. So I don't have any evidence. I don't have any reason other than just that feeling that you speak of. So that's why I would give it three having been there. So what would you give it on
I
the boo
actually think
scale?
I would give it a four just because of how uneasy I felt in that upstairs space. I feel the same way. I think just hearing the stories, it's like, oh, it's kind of violent, but not too scary. But I think being there in this space takes it up a notch because you see how kind of desolate it is, and you can picture kind of
Hmm.
these children in this space, in this horrible space.
Do you feel like our boo ratings on everything that we give a boo rating for that we haven't been to would be higher if we had been there? Or does it really just depend on if we walked in and got a feeling or not, or had an experience?
That's a good question.
Because is it
Um,
always scarier when you go to somewhere you know is
in
haunted?
person. So someday one of us will probably do the Stanley Hotel, which is one of our favorite places, right? Or we'll both
Mm-hmm.
do it together somehow. But I going into that visit, when we went to visit in person, was so freaked out by the stories of hauntings I had read and the history about it that I thought it was going to be very scary. And when we actually went there, I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel that sense of being scared. I thought it was actually pretty pleasant. That's just me saying if I had heard the stories, I probably would have given it a four and then being there in person maybe dropped it down.
Oh, interesting.
I think a lot of my rating personally would be done on how I feel in this space. And I think it could make the rating go up or down.
I had a different experience at the Stanley that I think you did. So maybe we'll save that, as you say, for another episode. I definitely had some creep factor moments there and things that happened, and I feel like we did catch some evidence. Next time
Interesting.
on Boo Sisters. Maybe that's like a season two thing. I don't know.
All right. As always, thanks for listening and
Happy
happy
hunting.
hunting!